everyone for joining us today for the Tips and Tricks to Perfect Your Proposal grant writing webinar hosted by AIDS United. Everyone has been placed on mute for this webinar, but we will take questions via the Q&A chat box on your screen. All of the questions will be answered at the end of the webinar, and we do hope that we'll be able to get through all of them before the end. Additionally, these slides are available to download using the box called Downloadable Files on your screen. I'm Liam Cabal, and I'm the Program Manager for a couple of the initiatives here at AIDS United, including our Southern Reach Initiative, and I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Bernard Turner, who will be facilitating today's webinar. In addition to being an Associate Professor of Social Entrepreneurship and Director at the Center for Social Entrepreneurship at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee, Dr. Turner has over 25 years of grant writing, training, and review experience. This experience has resulted in over $40 million in grants from private foundations and the federal government. He conducts basic, advanced, and intensive grant writing workshops for the Center for Nonprofit Management in Nashville, in addition to developing and teaching a grant writing course at Belmont where he matches students with local nonprofit organizations. His grant reviewer experience includes working for a Nashville-based private foundation and for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Dr. Turner has held the Grant Professional Certification from the Grant Professional Certification Institute since 2007 and is currently a board member and treasurer for the Grant Professionals Association. Dr. Turner, take it away. You might be on.
Thank you for participating in this webinar today, and I also thank AIDS United for allowing me to share my experiences in grant writing. So let's get started. As you can see, we have 4 learning objectives for this webinar today. So by the end of it, we hope U.S. participants will understand the 1060 rule of grant writing. We hope you understand the 10 tips for writing an effective grant application. Also understand 5 reasons why grant applications are denied. And hopefully you'll be able to write stronger grant applications after receiving what I call my insider perspective from being involved in experienced and successful grant writer and grant reviewer for over 25 years. So we got a lot to cover today, so let's get going. Okay, as you can see, there are 8 things here. So we have a full agenda that I want to cover. And we're going to talk about each one of these and some of them in detail, more detail. Okay, so the 1060 rule of grant writing. Well, early in my grant writing career, I attended a workshop that was held at a local housing conference. The facilitator worked for a nonprofit in D.C., and she told us about the 1060 rule of fundraising. She said there were 10 things you should be able to tell a donor in 60 seconds about your organization. She even had attendees come to the front of the room and, and practice, but I did not do it. I just couldn't volunteer at that time. So she stated you should not, and I agree with this, do not be concerned about the 60 seconds, but do be concerned about these 10 factors. Number 1, oh, by the way, I have modified this from the 1060 rule of fundraising to the 1060 rule of grant writing according to BT. So number 1, mission statement. Okay, I do realize some of you all have mission statements like this hospice organization that I used to work for some time ago. Our mission statement was 2 paragraphs and 7 bullet points. Do you believe that? So one of the things that I try to do, people when they ask me, what's your organization's mission statement? For the hospice organization, I said we provide quality services to the end of life. Now, I wasn't telling a story, but that's one way for me to be able to relate our mission statement. Also, in the grant writing courses I have conducted, I've had participants take a business card and put the 1060 rule on there and give it to staff, board, and volunteers. So why did they do that? They want everyone to be talking on the same page about their organization and their organization mission or purpose. So the other thing of it is that your board and your volunteers, they're advocates for your organization, but they're also, there can be fundraisers as well. Years in existence, number 2. How many years has your organization been in existence? Most people would say, well, we were started in 1965 or something like that. Well, think about this. Our organization has been around since 1965, or is it better stated, this is our 50th year anniversary. I don't want anybody trying to calculate the number of years we've been in existence. I think saying 50 years being in existence is more powerful than saying just we started in 1965. 3, accomplishments of the last fiscal year. It's always good to note the specific accomplishments of your organization from the previous year. Again, when I worked for the hospice organization, we applied for a technology grant to a local foundation. They called me up and said, Bernard, we need a few things for our file since it's the first time y'all ever applied. And so they asked me about an annual report. I said, well, we don't have an annual report. We're a small organization. She said, okay, send us a one-page list of your accomplishments for the past fiscal year. I said, bingo. Okay, for those of us that do not do an annual report, you can always have a list of your accomplishments from the previous year. Number 4, services provided. You all know that. You know the services you provide, but I would also say be thinking about the services that you want to provide as well. Geographic area served. When I asked people that in my grant writing courses, they said we serve everywhere. I don't think you might serve everywhere, but some organizations serve a neighborhood, a zip code, just their city or just their city and county where they reside, and some statewide and so on. Just be specific about that and make sure it's accurate. Number of clients served. Well, you know, here in higher education, we call them students. Some people call them participants. Some people call them consumers or patients. But you should know the number you served last year. Now, I know some organizations say that we serve so many direct and so many indirect. For example, I know an organization, they said we served 1,500 people last year. We served 1,000 of them directly and 500 indirectly. So what does that mean? They say, well, the indirect ones, we don't provide direct services to them, but they might be on our mailing list. They might come, you know, or they might come to a training we have or something of that nature. Number 7, revenue sources. It's very important that you know where you get your money from to operate your organization. Yes, grants is one, but what about donations? What about special events? What about some of you all might even have endowments, your organization, you know, revenue, from the interest and things of that nature. But make sure you know, and you can tell a donor where your money comes from. Current needs from the client's perspective. Yes, we are all do-gooders, but you know, we need to ask our clients, you know, what their needs are. And one of the things that I've noticed in some grants that I've been reviewing lately for the federal government and private foundation, they want to know how are your clients involved in the development of this grant, or if it's a new program, a new service. So they can provide some valuable input for you. Impact, I teach social entrepreneurship, and one of the things that we stress to our students that we have them look at the organizations and see if they can determine what the impact is. Always know what your impact is. And I always tell students that, my students and organizations that I work with, you have to be able to tell your story. And I'm going to talk about storytelling later, but, you know, you have to be able to tell this. One organization that I was consulting with AIDS United some time ago, it was a Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and we were interviewing some volunteers and some clients. And I said, what would happen if this organization closed its doors? And there was 14 people there, and 2 women started crying, and they said, this organization saved my life. At dinner that night, I asked the executive director and the board chair, do you know what your clients are saying about you? They said, they say we do a good job, and I relayed to them what those 2 ladies had said. That's a powerful testimony, and that's a good way for you to also assess your impact by asking your clients. And the last, number 10 of the 1060 rule of grant writing, know the number of staff, board member, and other volunteers that you have. And that's very important when we talk about board members and other volunteers, and we'll talk about that a little later. But if you look at these 10 things right here, a lot of these things is what's going to go into your grant request. So just remember that you got this is serious. These are 10 things that you really should know about your organization. Now, I am sure you all can come up with 5 or 10 more, but these are 10 key things right here. Okay? And if you have some questions about that, I can answer them later. Now, look at the top for writing a grant, okay? I did adapt this from her versus how to apply top 10 tips for applicants. And I have a slide for each one of these because I want to go in a little bit more detail with each one of them, okay? Okay, so the first one is start preparing early. Okay, start early and relieve that stress of writing that grant application at the last moment. And listen, you guys, I've been there. I've been there where I was at Fed at 10 minutes before they closed at 9:50 p.m. here in Nashville. And yes, I did have a relief, but I got that in. But if you really look at it, if you can finish early, there are many advantages. Yes, it will relieve some stress for you. But once completed, either you can move on to other pressing issues with your organization. But most of all, it gives you time to have someone else read the grant request and suggest revisions, if any. Let me just say this. When you're writing these grants, you have tunnel vision. This past last month, I was working with an organization, and we submitted one for $32.9 million. And we went back and forth, and we gave it to someone else. Matter of fact, I'll be honest, they hired me as a person to come in and be that objective pair of eyes that can look at it as they went along. And then I did find things that they just overlooked. Okay? Now, funders may be impressed that you got it in early. However, it is a good practice on your part, but I got to tell you, you do not get any extra points for doing so. But I think it's a good practice if you can get it in early, okay? Number 2, follow the request for the proposal instructions. You guys, this is the number one reason why your grant request is denied. You did not FTG the guidelines. In my grant writing class yesterday, I did an exercise with them, and they did pretty well, but I said the number one reason is that people do not follow the guidelines. Okay, this is where you laugh. This is not Burger King. You cannot have it your way when it comes to these requests. Just remember that. And think about all the work you did putting this grant proposal together. Ensure your hard work and funded by getting it in on time. I tease people and say I should write a book about, grant writing and all the things that I've seen over the years that I've done this as a reviewer. Number 3, keep your audience in mind. A perfect example of this is like that exercise that I tell you that I teach about basic grant writing. But I also let participants in my workshop read a letter proposal in which an organization is applying for funding from a local foundation. And the second paragraph of the proposal, the applicant provides a history of hospice to the foundation. Now, you don't insult the reviewers by giving them a lesson of Hospice 101, or on the screen I have HIV 101. You could have used that space to do other things. Remember, reviewers do have experience with HIV and AIDS field, and their perspectives are varied and can include experience in development, fundraising, advocacy, governance, management, evaluation, and so on. However, do not be afraid of telling the story of your organization and why funding is, but just keep your audience in mind, you guys. Number 4, be brief, concise, and clear. Focus and work within the page limitations. Work within the page limitations. People say that's hard because there's so much they need to say. Now, MACF now, I like acronyms. Make a case for support, but does not mean you need 20 pages to tell your story. If I told every participant that I know a foundation where you can get a $25,000 grant, but there was a page limitation of 3 pages, you could and probably would do that in no time. So what I've seen in my years when I first started reviewing grants and writing grants years ago, 25 pages was the norm. 25 pages is not the norm anymore for a private foundation. It's the one that we just did, the $2.9 million that I worked on last month, it was only 20 pages double spaced. And in March, I helped our local government submit to the federal government, and that was 20 pages double spaced as well. And $32.9 million one was to a private foundation. So what funders want you to do now is that they want you to be brief, concise, and clear, and go ahead and make that case for support. And you all can do this. You can do that. Number 5, be organized and logical. Make your proposal reviewer friendly. Use headings and subheadings. And I know some of y'all say, well, we do that. But ensure you address all factors in the RFP, all sections. Take a positive approach. Please do not say, I think we can accomplish this. Come on now, you got to have confidence. And as a reviewer, I like it when people say, when organizations say things positive. Based on our experience, we know we can make this happen. Okay, something like that. And please do not make assumptions. Do not make assumptions. And you all know what happens when you make assumptions. Okay, that was a joke. You are supposed to laugh, but I can't hear you anyway. Now, okay, show evidence of fiscal stability and sound fiscal management. You have an increasing deficit over the past 3 years. Not good. Financial discrepancies noted in your annual audit. Not good. Organization lacks capacity to manage financials. Good. You have a diversification of revenue streams. You know where money is coming from, like I said earlier. Yes, that's a good point. You have clean audits. Yes, that's a good point. You have strategies to ensure financial sustainability. Yes. And even if you are weak in some areas of fiscal management, don't be afraid to get a fiscal agent. Another organization to be your fiscal agent. Okay? You can work around this, especially be honest with the funding source when it comes to things like this and they start asking you questions. All right. Number 7, attend the technical details. My point here is, again, just follow the guidelines. As you all know, funders have gotten to the point they want to tell you what margins to use, page numbers, the number of characters, the maximum number of pages, the font. Listen, as a reviewer, you guys, we know when you're not using a 12-point font, you're doing a 10-point, and sometimes you're doing a 9-point. Follow those guidelines. And then, most of all, do not be reformatting any forms that they may give you. Okay? And make sure you read them. There's a budget form, a local foundation. I was the external grant reviewer for 7 years. They had this budget form, and people were always trying to override the form, and it was in Excel. And then they gave you an example on the bottom of your revenue, and they would have ABC Foundation. You know how many grant requests we have? And we don't even have an ABC Foundation here. And there people say ABC Foundation. Nope, they should have put the exact name. So here again, make sure you pay attention to those little technical details. Number 8, be careful in the use of attachments. Don't overdo it. You might want to include your strategic plan, and it's 20 pages, but your narrative is only 10. Well, consider just putting the executive summary or something. I believe in giving a foundation, any funder, exactly what they ask for, so I do not give them additional attachments, things back there. And videos, CDs are usually not accepted. In fact, I sent up for nonprofit management. He'll have something what we call meet the local funder, meet the funders. And there was one a foundation executive director there, and she said, I used to be executive director of a nonprofit. She says, so I know what you're going through and when you're submitting these grant applications. She said, but please don't send us videos and CDs. And it was about 75 of us in the room, and she said, probably about 30 of you all might apply. And I can tell you now, at least 20% of you are going to send me a video or CD. And she said, you know what I'm going to do with it? I'm just going to throw it in the garbage can. So that's wasting you money as well. Number 9, proofread and review your application. I know people always say, I spell checked it. My students do that too. But spell checking is not proofreading. T-O-T-W-O-T-O. They all sound alike, but the meaning is different. 2, 2, 2. And here again, I stated this earlier, when we're writing these grants, we know we have to meet the deadline. And so most times we're in tunnel vision mode. We know we got to get this out. That's why we need someone else to review it for us, because there might be things we miss. So we're too close to it, and we just need fresh eyes. So, and number 10, drum roll please, submit all information at the same time. Some funders may consider the application incomplete if all information is not available. As a matter of fact, years ago, I was the grant writing specialist and the allocations manager. We call it fund distribution manager for our local United Way. Somebody submitted their information to United Way to get funding, and she called me up and said that, Mr. Turner, I forgot to make a copy. She said, will you send me a copy? I told her I'd send her whole application back to her. And she said, well, you don't have to do that. I need a copy because I think I didn't submit some information. How do you think that looked to me as a potential funder for them? Submitting information late might be assigned to reviewers to question your capacity to provide services as requested in your grant request. Grant seekers, you all do not want grant makers or grant reviewers in the same case making assumptions about your capacity. I don't want to make an assumption about your capacity. As a grant reviewer, my thing is everybody come to the plate on an equal level, and I take the perspective, hopefully I won't see something to make me not want to recommend you for funding, or you don't get it. I give everyone a fair review, but just start off and do the right thing. Okay, you guys. So those are the 10 tips, and I can answer questions about that at the end. Now, over the past 2.5 decades I've been in this business, I've seen some trending, what I call trending of grants. And this is when we're doing public and private grants and things of that nature. And I think funders are being more strategic and intentional now about collaboration outcomes and sustainability. When I first got started, everybody was talking about collaboration. You can't do it alone. Well, you can do it alone, but it's good if you do it strength in numbers. When 2 or more gathered, okay? So it was big. Outcomes was really big when I first got started, and it still is. Then they went to outcomes. I remember our United Way going to outcome-based investment. And outcomes, what would happen during the grant period? One local funder calls this the so what question. So what? And then, outcomes about what change will occur, okay? Now, I give this example, not trying to be disrespectful or anything of that nature. You have adult literacy program, and you test adults at the beginning of the grant period, and they're reading at the 5th grade level. You do your program, your implementation, then at the end you test them again. And then they test at a 4th grade level. That's what we call a negative outcome, okay? So what's going to positively happen in terms of behavior, change in knowledge, change in attitudes, and things of that nature? But outcomes are really, really big. And AIDS United do have outcomes in the Southern Reach RFP. And then all of a sudden, we have this thing called sustainability, this trend. How will you sustain the project after the grant ends, if it is supposed to be ongoing? Well, most funders are concerned about it anyway, because they feel some of them might give you the initial investment, but they want you to keep going. The Southern Reach RFP guys do have a little question in it about sustaining the project as well. If you say, well, after this, the funding runs out from your grant, we just going to end it. Now, that's going to be a red flag to most funders. Can you continue the project at some level, at least some level, to ensure continuity, and so that those people you've been helping, they will still be able to get services? So this is what I call trending of grants. Still important. COS is still important. Collaboration, outcomes, and sustainability. But more and more, I'm seeing more folks want to know about sustainability. Okay? And they're still concerned about outcomes, and they still want you to play well with other organizations in the sandbox. Okay. I want to touch on a few things about the proposal narrative, if I can. a couple of things here. Excuse me. Who are your allies? Who are your collaborators? And your opponents? You will have some people that I call opponents. I call them naysayers. No matter what you're trying to do and you're doing good things, not all people are going to say what you're doing is a good thing or support that. And we have to recognize that. What evidence, research, and stats can you provide to demonstrate the need for the project that you're seeking funding for? And yes, some like to use national stats, but national stats is no good if we're talking about your community. A lot want to see stat statistics relative to the local needs, okay? So just keep that in mind. And I see that as a big flaw sometimes in a lot of grants that I read. What specifically, in terms of outcomes, do you want to accomplish by the end of the grant year? And how will you sustain the project after the grant funding ends? Have a plan in place. You might use proceeds from an event, such as a golf tournament. Some people do walks. You might get dedicated gifts from some donors that you want to say some of those funds are going to go to keep this project going. And then some organizations just put the project in their operating budget. Some more things about the proposal narrative. I always tell folks, it's like writing a grant is like storytelling. You're connecting people to your mission, okay? I heard, I was at the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance's annual conference this past January, and there was an executive director, CEO of a international nonprofit, and he said the nonprofits have not done a good job of telling their story. Think about the good work that we do here in this sector. We have got to learn how to better tell our story. Approach your narrative, like I said, like you're telling a story. Use client testimonies. This agency saved my life, and I am forever grateful. Use impact statements. 97 cents can save a life. And they're talking about providing a needle. And that's I'm going to talk later about that. Was the Robin Hood Foundation. I found that when I was doing research for this presentation. So storytelling is very important. Do you all know that they have organizations, storytelling associations and national organizations and things of that nature? It is becoming very common that people are getting trained on how best to tell their story. Okay, now, here's some things that I have called advocacy, grant pitfalls, and challenges. Okay? Let's be honest here. I'm going to provide a reviewer's insight about these things. And based on what I've seen in reviewing advocacy grants over several years now, there are about 8 things that I think are common here. Failure to describe the desired outcome. Now, I know you probably heard this dude just talks about outcomes. The outcomes are very important. Sorry. I know that the work you all doing, and you have a long history of providing quality services to your clients. In doing so, the difference here between advocacy grants, as I said, you might have more control over the outcomes when you're providing services. For lack of a better word, that's what I want to say. However, it is harder when it comes to advocacy, and you might not see all the desired outcomes that need to be done within a specific project period. It might take longer. So when it comes to advocacy grants, the job is tougher, you guys. And like I said, the outcomes might be even harder to achieve. But that does not mean you cannot have success doing advocacy. You just have to be more focused, more strategic, and more intentional in your efforts. Okay? And I must say again, please read the funder's guidelines and ensure you respond to all sections in detail. I assume that the organization, if it has funded you before, when I say that, if the foundation or funder has funded you before, that they still know what your intentions are. You have to tell that story and don't make assumptions, because everybody sitting at the table might not have all that experience and knowledge of your organization. Previous specific advocacy accomplishments. And you guys, I know as nonprofits sometimes we don't like to pat ourselves on the back, but you're going to have to make a case for support here. So if you have accomplishments, it doesn't matter if you train one person living with HIV and AIDS in your rural community, that's a success. That's one more person that's involved in advocacy. Usually we also, there's a failure to define the role of the person living with HIV and AIDS in advocacy activities. Or make sure you fully explain the barriers for a lack of involvement if that pertains to you. Questions about the amount of staff involvement when we see these advocate grants. Collaborations beyond the HIV/AIDS field. And as you know, I think you all probably know a lot of organizations, now funders, stressing the organizations. Who else do you have involved, okay? And you guys, I remember, this was about 20 years ago. I was working here in Nashville, the American Cancer Society, the Lung Association, Cancer, Lung, and Heart. They got together to work on a private grant to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And it was really good because it was talking about smoking, talking about the impact of smoking and things of that nature. Now, it was very interesting 20 years ago to sit down and work with them. But one of the things that I remember them saying is that we're all coming to the table as equal partners, and it's not about just one of us. It's about all three of our organizations collectively. I'm getting a $9,000 3-year grant from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. The other thing that I see, number 6, totally or highly dependent upon grant funding when it, in question when it comes to, trying to get project funding for advocacy issues. That is true. That might be true, but, you guys, you are bringing something to the table. So remember the staff that you have, that some of them might be in kind, but remember that you might be using volunteers and things of that nature. And I'm going to talk about dollar value of volunteer time soon. Insufficient budget justification. Justify every line item, you guys. Don't assume that because you said $500 for supplies, okay, what does that mean? Okay, be specific. And some people say, well, we should know that. Yeah, but I don't want to make assumptions about your organization at all, especially when it comes to the budget as well. And then also what I've seen lately is a failure to provide specifics about sustainability of your project. Okay? So you guys just think about these things, and I'm not criticizing you because I know this is hard work, but just think about these things, and I call them, I probably should have just said challenges, but I put pitfalls up there because these are some of the things that will make the reviewers think that you all are not ready for advocacy or you really haven't thought it out when it comes to doing advocacy activities. Bear with me, we're almost finished. The budget must coincide with the narrative. Practice TIA, I call that truth in asking. Come on, you guys. You might have it in there in your budget a social worker. Social worker got 2 years experience. Well, I don't know where you all live. I know you're probably in these regional southeastern United States or something like that. But listen, you guys. And I love social workers, so social workers don't send me nasty little comments, please, because my sister is one. But a social worker does good work, but 2 years out of school, they're not going to be making $60,000. Okay, and we see things like that in the budget, and we start questioning this and things of that nature. Also, include a detailed budget justification, like I said. But look, volunteers are valuable assets. Yes, we know we got some of those volunteers. We want to retire them. But listen, you guys, the independent sector determined that the value of 1 hour of volunteering equates to $23.07. $23 national average. But I did look at the states that can apply for Southern Reach grants through AIDS United, and that range was from $19.20 in Mississippi to $24.90 in Virginia. See, the independent sector, in addition to the national average, also have the average estimated dollar value for each state. Now, but I know a lot of nonprofits just use the national average. If I was in Virginia, I'd be using $24.90 because that's even higher than national average. Excuse me, but if you are using volunteers for your project, uh, they're an exact in-kind resources for you, and you can incorporate that in your budget. The other thing it lets funders do is see the true cost of that project that you're seeking funding for. So just keep that in mind. That's one of the tips I used to tell people that, and they're like, I never thought about that. Well, okay, now you have. Okay, top 5 reasons grants are denied. We're almost finished. We're almost home. So let me just say this. Number 1, guidelines not followed. Now, how many times have I said that here? Probably about 4 times. It is the number 1 reason. And you guys, I'm told that there's been research. And years ago, I did see a report on this research about this. They interviewed, surveyed some program officers, asking them what was the number 1 reason. That's what they said. I've done the same thing with our local funders here in Nashville, and that is the overarching reason. Application guidelines were not followed. So just please follow the guidelines. Number 2, your case for support was weak. This is where you should practice your storytelling. Look for facts, testimony, stats, evidence, like I said before, about your community and where you're going to provide these services. All right, the budget was not supported by the project design. Now, I'm not going to say anything else about that since I just stated that. The applicant organization did not demonstrate sound fiscal management or capacity to implement the project. Now, I'm telling you, sometimes that's what I have written in my review about organizations, okay? But here again, if you're a small grassroots organization, or you could be large and medium-sized and have a problem, you can always look at a fiscal agent. But you guys, talk to the funding source about this as well, and just be honest with them about, I won't say a weakness, but some areas that you need to improve on. And lastly, the application was not received by the deadline. Now, if you think about it, this goes all the way back to what I began talking about, top tips and things of that nature. After you have done all that work of writing the grant, you missed the deadline. Oh, and I've seen this happen plenty of times. As a matter of fact, you guys, I was doing a HRSA site visit, and I was looking at the budget in the first, when we go on a site visit, we always do what we call an entrance meeting. And then we also do an exit meeting. And I kept looking, because I'm what they call administrative consultant. I kept looking at these financials. And so the program director finally got up there and said, well, Dr. Turner is looking at the financials, so let me tell him I know there's a discrepancy, and I think by the way he's looking at it already, what a discrepancy was $800 less than in revenues the following year. And you know what happened? They were 10 minutes late getting an $800,000 renewal grant in. And it couldn't be accepted because it was 10 minutes late. Okay? I got some other stories about that as well, but we don't have time for that today. So I only have a few more slides, so I'm almost finished, you guys. Resources. So I did some research in preparation for this site visit. And as you can see on the left-hand side, Advocacy, there is a Consumer Health Foundation. If you look on there, they talk about funding health advocacy. They also talk about investing in change, a funder's guide to support and advocacy. You might say, well, Bernard, they talking about a funder's guide. Okay, and you just an organization applying. But isn't it good to know what funders looking for, other funders? That's what I call the inside now. And then also, the Consumer Health Foundation also has Consumer Health Advocacy, a view from 16 states. Those might be what we call lessons learned. Nothing wrong with lessons learned or best practices. And then Age United's current request for proposals for Southern Reach. If you look under the expected outcomes and common indicators, hint, 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 they're telling you exactly what they're looking for in terms of outcomes with this funding. And then on the right-hand side, if you're going to be applying for syringe access funding, there's an organization called the Comer Family Foundation. I think that was the guy was the founder of Land's End Clothing Store. Yeah. And they've been funding syringe exchange nationwide for 22 years. I don't know how many of you all know that. I didn't know that. And then there is the Robert Hood Foundation in New York City. Raised a whole lot of money, but they're really concerned about impact. But one of the things they said, if you look on their website, they say, and I quote, to us, the issue was simple. A 97-cent needle can save lives. And then finally, Elton John AIDS Foundation, I know a lot of you all know about that, but on their website it says this: more than 4,000 Americans become infected with HIV every year because of unsafe injection drug use. Not only is those impact, that's how you make a case for support as well. So these are some resources. The only thing you have to do is Google the name, and you can find out more information as you prepare to write proposals for Advocacy or Sharon Jackson. Acronyms, I just want to tell you, you know that means follow the guidelines. MAC up there, make a case for support, and TIA, truth in asking. On one more slide, and please, just remember this next slide. I call it my conclusion, something to think about, uniqueness exercise. Think about this, you guys. You know, telling your stories, you know, making a case for support, and one, what makes your organization the best at what you do? I dare you to do this exercise in a staff meeting. You're probably going to be surprised at what you come up with. What does your organization offer clients they can get nowhere else? Oh, by the way, you never say anything bad about another organization because you never know, they might be affiliated with a funding source or whatever. Why should a funding source give your organization a grant over another organization in your field? And what does your organization offer funding sources they can get nowhere else? Okay, pat yourself on the back, but do this. I dare you to do this exercise. You're going to be surprised what comes out of it. You guys, you do a great job. You know, I hope you have heard something today that might be valuable to your organization. I thank you so much for listening and taking time out of your busy schedule. Liam, if there's any questions, we can take them now.
Thanks, Bernard, for that excellent presentation. I wanted to mention a couple of things really quick. As we mentioned earlier, the presentation is available in PDF format and can be downloaded through the box on the screen that says downloadable files. So now with your questions through the Q&A chat box on your screen. However, I want to encourage you to stay on the line after the Q&A because we'd like to go over a few other funding opportunities and other TA options for that AIDS United offers. So we've got one question so far, and please feel free to take and include any questions that you have in the Q&A box. Bernard, would you be able to kind of reiterate the importance of collaboration beyond the HIV/AIDS field when you're talking about advocacy grants?
Sure. You know, as you all know now, you know, people are really, funders like it when we say a coalition or a consortium. You know, what you're doing in advocacy, some of you all might say, well, it affects those people who are living with HIV and AIDS. But if you think about it, it's a public health issue. So if you bring in other folks, whether it's lung cancer and things of that nature, that's always a good thing. So more and more funders are looking to see if you're not, and I won't say a silo, but I'm saying if you're just staying in your field, your area of interest, they love it when you bring other people to the table, because you know what it does? It helps them when they have to report to their board. They might say, this applicant that we're thinking about funding, you guys have broad-based support. You know, other organizations in the health field that's funding them and things of that nature. So that's one of the things that they look for. So make sure when you look at these requests for proposals, they talk about collaboration and things of that nature in other sectors. Make sure you pay attention to that. What I've seen, even here locally, now see, it's very important when you're talking about advocacy on a statewide and national level, because you're going in with other folks that, you know, that are your advocates. And here even locally, some of our local foundations that fund health, they're looking to see if you're looking outside of your own sector, if you're looking to do work with other folks. And you know what, you guys, the same work that they're doing is complementary to what you're doing. Okay, I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Bernard. We have another question. It's about 501c3 status, and so this particular, and I think Bernard, you can start with answering it, and I think if we have more specifics, I can provide that. But it's let's see, it's this particular organization is an incorporated organization, but not a 501c3, and there was a question if there are grants available for that organization without having to collaborate with another organization that has a 501c3.
My answer to that is that's totally dependent upon the foundation. A lot of them are restricted to only funding 501c3s. The Grant Professional Association, we're a 501c6 or C4 membership association, so we do have a 501c3 foundation. But that's a question that you should directly ask any potential funder, okay? But usually, you have to have a 501c3. That's when you can get a fiscal agent. And then some fiscal agents, it's not, I know some that there might be 15% indirect that you can get on a grant, and they might say that they want 10% of that because they're the ones that have to do all the reporting stuff. But usually, the foundation would say you must be a 501c3 because that's the restriction that they have upon them.
Thanks, Bernard. So again, I want to remind everybody you can submit your questions through the Q&A box. So far, we haven't received any additional ones. I'm going to actually go on ahead and cover a couple of other things, but if you have additional questions, I'm going to, I'll keep monitoring. Actually, I shouldn't speak so quickly. It looks like we had a couple additional questions. So this is a great question, I think. Are funders looking for fancy language, or is it more important to get your points across in words that are easily digested?
Easily digested. As a matter of fact, there used to be an old rule that says that, whatever the local, say for example, a newspaper, they say, what is that? Some people say that's 5th grade level, 6th grade level reading. Foundation, we're more, and I'm putting on my reviewer hat now, we're more concerned that you just come with us, be clear, concise, and brief, like I said. All those big words, from my experience, a lot of organizations use those big words, don't even know what they mean, or they're not adhering to it. So just go and tell the story, and that's all I can say about that. So no, you don't have to use all those big words. Now listen, that's interesting to also say that there is, and I have this, it's called action words. You know that woman I told you that taught us the 1060 rule of fundraising, I changed the 1060 rule of grant writing. She gave us a list of what she said action words, like, when you're writing it, you get stuck. And there are words on there that we're used to, empower, and things of that nature. But you don't need to say all those big words. Just tell the story and, talk to the funder, like, and respond to these questions in a grant request, like you're concerned. No, you don't need all those big words. And that is a great question because I hear that a lot of times, too. I say, just tell the story. Just, act like you're talking to somebody. And I don't know about you all, I'm not impressed with people that use big, fancy words.
Thank you, Bernard. I think that's, I completely agree with that. So we have another question I think is great. If they give you space for 2,000 words, should you try to use all of them, or if you can be more brief, is that better?
Okay, going back to Hersh's top tip that said be brief, clear, and concise. Just use, just be clear, brief. You do not have to use all the other words. Now, one of the things that I've known with people I work with, and I do this too when I write grants, what I find it's easier to cut words than to add additional words. So it might be 200 words or 300 characters, whatever. I write out my initial response, okay, and then I cut back. But, if you can say, if it's 2,000 words and you can say what you need to say in 1,000, so be it.
Great. Thank you. So, so far, those are the questions that we've had submitted, and we really greatly appreciate all of everyone's questions. If you have additional ones, please feel free to submit them via the Q&A box. So in an effort to stay in line with timing, I'm going to move on to a couple of things. So I just want to give a quick overview of two of our initiatives um, and the funding opportunities that are available. So Southern Reach, it's a grant-making initiative focused on 10 southern states in the U.S. here and supports policy advocacy projects. Applications are now being accepted, and they're due on October 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can find out more about that initiative by clicking the first link in the slide here. Additionally, the Syringe Access Fund is a national grant-making initiative that supports direct service and policy projects that aim to reduce HIV and HCV risk among people who inject drugs. We anticipate the request for proposals for the Round 9 cycle will be released in mid-September, so you'll want to check our website often for that announcement, and similar to the Southern Reach, we'll hold a webinar shortly after the release of the RFP to go over the frequently asked questions, so stay tuned for that, and you can just check that link under Syringe Access Fund on this slide here. For those interested in receiving free one-on-one grant writing technical assistance or assistance of any other organizational program development area, you may want to consider submitting a request through AIDS United's Getting to Zero initiative. Our Getting to Zero initiative is a 5-year cooperative agreement with the CDC focused on building capacity in communities across the country. Specifically, Getting to Zero staff work with CBOs to engage in strategic planning and implementation of interventions focused on people living with and at risk for contracting HIV, particularly MSM of color, trans women, active substance users, serodiscordant couples, and previously incarcerated individuals. We also promote organizational development and program development best practices to improve impact and sustainability. To learn more about the Getting to Zero initiative and how your organization can submit a request, contact Kelly Stevens at CBA, that's CBA, at aidsunited.org. It looks like we have a couple of other questions I'd like to cover as well. So I like this question. So what advice could you give, Bernard, to a new associate who's new to grant writing but comes from a journalistic background resulting in a different kind of writing style?
Well, thank you. Okay. Look at our website, Grant Professionals Association. GPA, we have over 2,000 person grant professionals, and we do an annual conference this year. We're in St. Louis. That's number one. And then that's not number one. That's one of the things I recommend. And if your community has a basic grant writing or grant writing course, I would say go and attend that. And then you can see. If you have one up already. I mean, I always tell people, you can write, but, a lot of people, they shy away from grant writing. So I would say take a grant writing course, all-day grant writing course. And, some of them, we have some organizations doing 4 days, 2 days, and then considering joining the Grant Professional Association because you can network with folks. Even if you don't come to the conference, there's a whole lot of networking that goes on outside. So that's what I would recommend.
We've got a couple of specific questions around the Southern Reach RFPs, and I'll answer that in a moment. But so there's another question around, I'm sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulties on my end. There we go. So if a grant is a statewide grant, but it specifies a preference for a geographical zone within the state without implicitly stating it won't fund other areas, how likely is it that they will fund outside their stated target zone?
Well, I can't answer that as specific because that's such a specific question. I would say go back to the funder and just ask them that question.
And I think that actually highlights exactly that, Bernard. In an original, in your earlier part of the presentation about making sure that you're sticking to the guidelines and that you're reading the RFP in detail to make sure that you're covering parts that may not be funded. If it's specifically stated in the RFP, it's very likely that you have to follow those strict guidelines, right?
Right. But if it's unclear to that person, I think it's okay to call the funding source. I mean, you saving them work by, You say that, you can just say that I just need clarification on this, and I think that's okay. But you're right, Liam. I always follow those guidelines. But if there's questions, I think asking a question is not a bad thing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And so I'm actually going to quickly address a couple of these questions around Southern Reach. But the Southern Reach grant is due. The applications are due on October 1st. Originally, there was information that said the 30th of September. We've extended it by half a day, actually, so then folks can actually get it in by the 1st of October by 5 p.m. And the Syringe Access Fund RFP will be released on September 15th. So, and the folks who've asked questions around getting to zero, I would strongly recommend contacting Kelly Stevens at cba@aidsunited.org. And so finally, I want to thank Bernard again for facilitating this great webinar. We greatly appreciate it if you guys could take a few minutes to complete a short evaluation of this webinar by clicking the link on this slide. It shouldn't take you too long, and we are trying to improve our webinar offerings always, and one of the ways we do that is by gathering feedback from our webinar participants. So thank you again, everyone, and please feel free to visit our website at aidsunited.org for any other funding opportunities, and this webinar will be available by next week as a recording on our website. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic day. And thank you again, Bernard.
Thanks.